about a project that I've been working on for a couple of months. First of all, I just want to give a quick shout out to Women Who Go. This is a new meetup, certainly not from San Francisco, but it is started here in San Francisco by our own Sarah Adams. If you are interested in Go and you identify as a woman, you may be interested in talking to Women Who Go. So check them out. So, for those who don't know me, my name is David. I'm here from Australia. In my day job, I work for Canonical, working on a product called Juju, which, if you're a large enterprise customer, come talk to me about later. In my spare time, I contribute a lot to the Go project. I've worked on ports of ARM64. We got that one for Go 1.5. Also helped a little with the PowerPC port, and also spent a lot of time on ARM as well. So the project I'm going to talk to you about tonight is called GB, which was a thing that I have been thinking about for more than a year, definitely more than a year. But I didn't really do much about it until a couple of months ago when I gave a talk in Berlin. And so most of GB at that time was written on a train between Nuremberg and Berlin. And I gave that talk, and this is really the follow-up to that. So GB is a build tool for Go in the same way that we have the Go tool. The key differences are that it's project-based. I shouldn't say workflow, I should say workspace-based. One of the key ideas is that we want to provide repeatable builds by source rendering. And this is important because it's vendoring without rewriting ports. And lastly, GB is a set of reusable components in sort of the way that Command Go is not. Like Command Go, all the logic is locked up in a big main package. I think it's important that there are a set of libraries which let you build Go code directly. So how's GB different? Well, the first one is that it is not a wrapper around the Go tool. I think this is an important differentiator. GoDeps and many of the other tools just wrap the Go tool. And that's fine, but what I think not wrapping the Go tool, basically re-implementing that logic, gives us is, for one, it gives us agility. We can talk about building code without having to fit it through what can be expressed through the Go tool, without having to kind of, contrive a Go path that achieves what we want. The second one is it gives us speed. We don't have to wait until a bug fix lands in the next version of the Go tool. And if you're unfortunate enough that your company isn't chasing the bleeding edge, you may have to wait even longer. So having a thing built outside the Go standard library, I think, is an advantage. And the last one is extensibility. And I talked a little bit about this before. GB, and through Command GB, which is the command that you interact with, has a set of assumptions which I'll go through. But you can take these components and put them together and use them to build effectively your own build tool. When I was at GOPATH last week, I spoke to a man from a large internet service provider who have a very strange mandated way they need to lay out their project. Now, I can't help them directly with GB. What we want to do is build in stone, but I suggested to him that I will work with him to help him to add the features to let him build his own build tool using these components. And the second bit is that GB doesn't use GOPATH. GOPATH, being a workspace, only allows one copy of a project and the dependencies. Moving away from the Go tool actually means moving away from GOPATH because they're tightly integrated. And why would we want to do this? Because GOPATH doesn't actually help with dependency management. This is pretty much why you're all here tonight, to hear me talk about this. So the opposite of this is, why is a project-based approach useful as opposed to using GOPATH? Well, first of all is that it gives you an opportunity to control all the source of your project, including the source that it depends on, in one place, the project. You can have multiple working copies on disk. You can just change between them. This is very important to working on Juju because we have to support 4 or 5 release branches currently. So the ability to be able to move between those very quickly and without any overhead is really important to us. Similarly, it gives you a clear separation between the code that you write and the code that you depend on. I know people in the past who've tried to have GOPATHs with multiple elements prefer this. They want to say, this is my stuff, and this is the stuff that I wanted from somebody else. They want to have a clear separation. You can upgrade the team on your schedule, not when somebody else pushes to their master. Similarly, you can avoid being upgraded by someone randomly when they push to master. And again, pushing this message of tools. Go's all about tools, and GB just gives you more. No import rewriting. I felt so passionate about this that was one of the major reasons why I wrote GB. It's kind of a little new now because the tide has turned, and we're not going to do import rewriting through the new vendor experiments coming Go 1.5. But the reason I felt so passionate about avoiding import rewriting is that although GB relies on source code variables, copying it wholesale, hopefully in the future we can do something a bit smarter. And if the imports are rewritten, the source where they came from, their names are changed, that is removed as an option. So I think no import rewriting is really important. And GB also encourages this idea of a project owner. And the project owner is responsible for admitting dependencies into that project, and secondly, curating those dependencies once they're in. There's a real idea of ownership and identifying our project now depends on this particular set of libraries, Martini, Negroni, something like that, and accepting that ownership explicitly rather than just kind of filtering in through someone adds that import line and then go fetches it for you. So I'm going to give a whirlwind tour of GB, and I'm going to do a live demo, and we'll have some questions. Making a GB project is super simple. Any directory that has a subdirectory called source is a GB project. That's all there is to it. Let's just put a bit of source in there, just a hello world type thing. You do need to put things inside packages. And in fact, GB is much stricter about this than the Go tool. There is no option to build or run a single file. Everything must be in a package. We think this is important because while you can use Go run to run a single file or to test a single file, that idea quickly runs out of steam. And so this is very much about encouraging people with the right behavior, with a little more overhead up front into the right behavior. Building it, GB build, obviously. When it's compiled, it goes into the usual place of package for reuse later. If you have commands, they go into bin, so bin hello world, blah, blah, blah. GB has really good support for incremental compilation. And we've done away with this idea of having to go build versus go install. Basically, anytime you build something or even test something, if there is a piece of the compilation that can be saved, we save that then. So there's always just GB build. There's no GB install kind of thing. The usual things of GB build, a particular path or a subpath or a glob or something like that are supported. But because incremental compilation is so strong, you can basically stay at the root of your project and just keep doing GB build and GB test. Anything that needs to be built will be made up to date. And obviously, if you have multiple commands that are found in your project, they're built. So this is just an example of having multiple commands. They're built, you can see them in bin. The layout of a GB project looks fairly similar to GOPATH. You've got your bin there, the source laid out. Some other directories you might find in RLC package for compile .a files, and probably a vendor directory, which we'll get into in a little bit. Now, GB doesn't care how that source got on disk. All it cares about is that it's arranged in the layout it expects. It's this path that I laid out before. Now, it's a pretty good idea that you probably want to check this into source control. And the simple answer to that is you just check the whole thing in. You probably want to exclude bin and package because they're just temporary stuff, and you might want to use a a git ignore, but you are working with the root of the project always. So that's all going to be pushed into one repository. Now the big question is dependency management. At the moment, GB's answer to dependency management is vendor, wholesale copying of the source. That source goes into a different area. So rather than project source, it goes into vendor source. And that's how we give the separation between the stuff that you've written and the stuff that other people have written. You can do this manually if you like, but obviously we've written a plugin. So GB vendor fetch, one of the packages that we depend on that is missing. So command GSFTP needs GitHub package SFTP. GB vendor fetches that. We also support recursive fetching, similar to the way that GoGet does. And now we can just build the whole thing. Pretty uncontroversial. Obviously, once you've vendored some code, you should add that and commit all that as well. And then this becomes, at that point, you are the project owner. This is part of the role of project ownership. You now have taken this code and brought it into your repository. You now own it. There are various commands for updating it. That'll just pull it up to the head of the branch you got it from. We support branch and tag and revision and all these ones for customizing the particular revision of that path that you want to vendor. Obviously, we have delete, and I'll show a few of the other commands in a bit. GB also has the idea of list. Who's used the go list? The go list command. Yeah. So we have the same idea. You can. This is the default presentation, but all of these are essentially templated fields that you can control. So one request I had a while ago was from someone who's coming from a Ruby background, and there are services which will look at your bundler depends file and kind of advise you appear to be depending on an insecure version. You should probably do something about that. So this gives you tools to kind of interact with the manifest that's been recorded of the dependencies you've vendored. And so if you saw my presentation in Berlin, I was the person that made a big stink that there would never be a manifest file for Go projects because nobody could agree on the syntax. And this is probably partially true, and my excuse is that the manifest file is only used by this plugin. It's not required for GB, but there is no other way, there is no other place to put this configuration information. So the manifest file is part of the vendor plugin. It's not used by GB. Again, GB just looks at the files on disk. It doesn't care how it got there. So I'm going to put this microphone down, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask someone in the audience, who I promise I haven't prepared, to give me a project that they've got. So this is it shouldn't be a library, but it should be something on GitHub that is a package that produces a set of Go code that produces a binary, and we'll try and convert it into a GB project so you can see how that works. Has anyone got? Yeah, down the front.
Go trending.
Okay, let me just make this. Oh, is that all right? So Go training.
Trending, like GitHub trending.
Okay. Okay. So, what's your URL?
It's a friend's project, so.
Okay. We can do two. Is there anybody else while we're... Yeah, down the back?
GOSURI.
GOS?
URI.
Yep.
/ go-store. I kind of have a vendor store with the E.
Store.
Can I have an underscore vendor directory? Vendor dependencies?
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so let's have a look at... Okay, so this is good because it means we can just ignore that. We can ignore that vendor.
I mean, the dependencies are repeated.
We don't need that. So
That may not work as good Redis.
okay, so let me just move that up a little bit. So the first thing we're missing is, can we store app? Package app. Okay, sorry. First thing I need to do is move this to the correct location where it thinks it came from. So yep, I'll do that for you in 1 second. I just need to get the goes through it. Okay, so let me just try and move that. Nope, can't move it out of the way. Okay, Okay, so this is what it would look like if this was an empty GOPATH. So instead of the checkout being at the root, we've moved it back into we've moved it back into the path that which you'd expect. So Redis will probably be importing github.com, go store, that kind of thing. So that's the first step. Okay. Oh, this is going to be terrible because you've actually rewritten all the imports. Right. Okay, can't use you. Sorry.
I mean, you can erase.
You rewrote the imports. It's impossible now. I'll come and help you later. Okay. So
There's one dependency.
That's a nice one. Okay. Okay. So if we okay, so this has a dependency on Go query, so we can go and get that. Sorry. Okay, so we're fetching Go query, and as you can see, it's got a few recursive dependencies on Cascadia, I don't know that one, and the net HTML package. So then if we, there we go. So that is literally all it's required to convert your project from Go gettable form to GB form. So, okay. I don't have a lot of time, so we'll have to leave that there. So wrapping up, GB, by the numbers, we have some stars. I don't know what the current exchange to Series A funding is for that. But more importantly, we have a bunch of contributors I want to call out. This is fantastic. We have about 24 contributors so far, and I'm just so thrilled to have people who are engaged with this project. Before I open for questions, I want to answer some of the more obvious ones. The first one is, how does GB handle the dynamic dependency problem? And the answer is that it's the project owner's problem. There can only be one copy of that source in that vendor directory. So whatever copy it is the one that's going to be building it. So there's no way for that Go does not provide a way to link in two copies of the same package. It's just physically not possible. So there isn't a data dependency problem in that respect. If you find yourself in a condition where down one tree dependency graph, you need a completely different version of, say, the MongoDB driver to another, you will have to, as the project owner, this is what project ownership is about. You can't just, as Blake said, you can't just pick these things off the street and you should consider it first. So that's the first one. How do we handle the dependency problem? By pushing it onto the project owner. That's actually the only way to do it. The second one is, how does all this change with the Go 1.5 experimental rendering support? Well, the good thing is that Keith's proposal was accepted, and we have this new experimental flag. And in fact, very recently, thanks to Edward Muller, Gobis now supports vendor, the vendor subdirectory in your Go-Gettable repository. Also, many of the annoying things that I complained about in Berlin have been fixed. Competition is really good for consumers, it turns out. GoGet can now use this vendor. GoGet users can now vendor their dependencies into their repositories. It gets a little more confusing when you go get one repository that has vendored some more stuff. I think that what GB does is much cleaner in that there's no kind of recursive searching for dependencies. It's all in one place. But most importantly, it doesn't really affect GB because we don't use GoGet, and GB projects are not Go-Gettable. We still have our own idea of having a project-based approach rather than a workspace. So this is great. Like this, especially all the annoying bits that have been fixed with the Go tool. This is great. You get them for free. You don't even have to use GB. But in terms of how does this impact what we're doing in GB, not a great deal. And the last one, can a GB project be a library? And the answer is absolutely yes, it can be. The difference between a project and a library is really, does it produce a binary or does it just have stuff that other people are going to consume? At the moment, to vendor one GB project into another is a manual process. Most of the support is there in the GB vendor command. It's just not all wired up yet. So if you feel passionate about that, raise an issue, come talk to me afterwards, or send patches. And that's really all I have. So just to recap, project-based, man, search and replace. It's supposed to say workspace, not workflow. Anyway, repeatable builds via source vendoring without import rewriting. And the thing I'm most proud about is we have reusable components that I could come up with an answer to the guy from the ISP who needed, there was no way that any of the tools that had been proposed before, or the Go tool, or even GB could meet his requirements, but that there was a way forward that he would consume the components that GB is made out of to build his own build tool. So I have a few little prizes for the first question and the second question. I guess that will be the first question.
So what are the plans for GB for cross-compilation now and in the future?
Okay, the question is, what are the plans for cross-compilation? We absolutely do want to support it. It's just a matter of time. I spend a lot of time on ARM, so I want this very much. It is just a matter of time. The vendor plugin has been taking a lot of the development time. It was something I'd hoped to push off to later. I really thought that I could hold the line with using Git submodules, but no, that didn't work. So all these things we absolutely want, and I want to have a really good story for cross compilation, not just for 1.5, but also for 1.4 as well. I think we can do a better job there. You were a third, and I don't know if you get a prize. We've already got lots of them.
I many times wish that GoGet could fetch a specific revision of a repository. Can GB vendor fetch an update?
Have we never met before, sir?
We might have, yes.
Do you want me to, okay, I'll demo that. So the question is, how can we use GB vendor to fetch a particular revision or tag or something like that? With a flag, of course. Beep. Let me. So just get a random hash. And so all we're going to do is move the hash of this one back. Hopefully everyone can see that at the back. So first of all, I type it correctly? So remove that one from the list. And now so the only difference before is that we're passing a vision to say we want to call this specific vision. You can all see this is obviously pins it to an exact revision. You can switch to branch, which is probably better, or tag. So previously we're on vision 518ADD, and now we're here. And you can see also that rather than saying branch master, we're on a detached head. Over there.
Are you accepting contributions for cross compilation, or are you working on it?
I would love to accept contributions. Let's talk first before we start to do it. That's the only.
Wait, so first was it?
A big part.
I didn't follow you first.
So open an issue and talk about what you want to do. This kind of works the same as the Go project. Talk, then code. If you do it the other way around, you might waste your time. Down the back.
You have SIGO and Swig support, and how do you implement it?
I have SIGO support, how to implement it with blood, sweat, and tears. For the 1.6 branch, I really want to open a proposal that a lot of the logic that is inside the command Go tool is pulled out so that other people can use it. Previously, this was a bit of a problem because in the standard library, there was a stronger version to making new packages, obviously because we're stuck with them forever. Now we have methodologies like the eternal rewrite, and there are a number of bits of the Go source code which are maintained in external repositories and then copied back in. The VCS logic which drives Go get is similar to that. So hopefully we can do something similar with the way that the Go build logic works. And for Swig, no support, sorry.
But even if we do that for SIGO, you'll be linking in a specific version of the external SIGO build package. That will tie you to a specific version of the compilers and the SIGO tool itself.
Okay, so the question as I understand it is, I will be linking in a specific version of the SIGO tool.
If you want GB to work with multiple versions of the sort of the core tool.
Okay, so the question is, how does GB work independently from, I'm sorry, I'm really paraphrasing. Maybe I should answer the question that I think, and that might be it. This is a really interesting thing. GB is closely tied to the version of Go that compiles. This is the most sane way to do it. It turns out that the Go tool is also has this close coupling, but kind of, you don't notice it because it comes with the standard distribution. But for example, for Go 1.4 and Go 1.5, we have build tags in building GB to alter its behavior for the tool chain that it's working on. So when you install, when you build GB, it's customized for the version of Go that built it. Which I hope, so certainly a lot of the SIGO behavior has changed between 1.4 and 1.5. And at the moment, it's a case of rebuilding GB when you switch between tool chains. Or you can just keep two. Like I have one built with 1.4 and one built with 1.5. I should probably talk to you more about this afterwards. Yes?
What's the roadmap?
The roadmap is, so GB itself has got two goals, to build and to test. That's all it does. It was very much an experiment to see how a build tool could work in that kind of Git plugin nature. Like it uses exactly the same methodology. Anything called GB hyphen becomes a plugin. I alluded to more that copying the source file rendering works. It gives us the repeatability that I certainly need at Juju. Maybe there are other ways to do this, and hopefully through the plugin API, like reusing the components for GB, that'll be useful. Yes, down the back.
I'll talk about it. You mentioned when you were presenting that you were actually seeking time and your directory with source control. Could you actually just put the manifest file of source control and leave the rest out, like ignore it, and you run through the provider? Is that a valid option?
Okay, so the question is, if we have this manifest file, which pretty much describes exactly the thing we need, why? There we go. Why bother to checking the source? This is certainly very much personal preference on my point of view, and also pointing out that the GB vendor is a plugin. So if you want to do it slightly differently, you can reuse the components and do it yourself. I have a very common feature request that comes up, and I keep closing on GB, for people who, like you saw how we can recursively fetch dependencies. You just need to know the name of one and you can fetch that whole arm. People say, well, why can't we just fetch them all? Like, you've got all the logic there. And my resistance to that is that would do exactly what GoGet does. It fetches from head because there's no other information you can give it. And so the best thing is that, congratulations, I've just rewritten GoGet, and we're back in the same position we started with. So I want project owners to focus on the responsibility of taking on dependencies, because it's not a small undertaking. You should consider it every time you add them. That's really my answer to you, Mark. It is not a technical limitation. It's just how I've chosen how I think the Go project should be managed. And the important bit is that you can take all these tools and you can build your own way. You can build your own plugin to GB. It doesn't need to live in the same repository. All it just needs to do is start with GB hyphen. Any other questions, or call it here? Yes, last one.
So if you start using PGP on a bunch of different projects, you have to manually copy those projects into your source or the vendor directory. Is that what you said?
Okay, so the question I understand is, if you start to use GB on libraries,
Like multiple libraries, and you want to put them in different projects.
okay.
Does that mean you have to?
At the moment, it's quite a manual process, but to explain that a little bit, the target users that I see for GB are people who are not writing libraries, but actually writing applications in Go that produce a Pro binary or produce a service or are deployed somewhere. So they're really the end of the line of that dependency chain. You can use GB for libraries. At the moment, it's a little bit handronic, and we need to close the gap there with GB vendor. But certainly the target audience that I had in mind were people like myself working in Canonical who have to support multiple release branches concurrently, multiple feature branches. And there's no one that really consumes Juju. Juju produces a client and a server, they go into a dev package, that's the last we hear of them. So that's really the target market that I had in mind. Thank you. Okay, let's call it here. Thank you very much.